Is George after Recleffin?
Yes, no, actually it's...
No, it's Aaron. God, I'm sorry. So our fourth storyteller, who will come up after the break, is Aaron, whose bio is right here. And he goes by Smokey. His name is Aaron Smokey Arnold, and he got that nickname in high school. I found out earlier. He's a native Ohioan? Oh, from Ohio. He's from Ohio. And he has a degree in gerontology and devotes his life to being a senior activity coordinator. He's been a lacto-ovo vegetarian for 41 years. 47 years, has not had a cheeseburger. Amazing. He sings, that's power. He sings recreationally. He helps administrate a Four Tops appreciation group on Facebook. He loves song standards, sees lots of movies, and recently discovered a passion for creating audiobooks. And his biggest fantasy, which I'm sure many of us share, I do, is to narrate Peter and the Wolf with a live symphony orchestra. Yeah. Don't you want to do it?
Annie, I want the next dance. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Everybody loves to travel, right? Or so we think. No. Nothing's of universal appeal. What can I say? By nature, I never like to be away from home very long. I don't know. I'm not agoraphobic or anything. I don't think I even have standard travel fears, which is hodophobia, I later learned, or travel anxiety, which apparently is different. I don't fully have a grasp of it. I have some symptoms of each, but I just don't like to be away from home very long. And I noticed that, when I was in high school, a group of my friends and I wanted to go to New York. All had these New York fantasies. I wanted to go to Central Park and Washington Square, and I'll see the Statue of Liberty and all. But then we're talking, and they're talking about how they want to go for 3 weeks. I want to go for 2 days. But fortunately, we compromised. One friend felt the same way, and he and I went on our trip. They went on theirs. But what's really ironic about me saying this, you would have thought otherwise when I was in about second grade. I had the oddest fascination with, believe it or not, geography. I loved to read maps when I was a kid. I was obsessed over maps. Land maps, road maps, how things were connected, how to get from one place to another. I learned to memorize the 50 states. I could still say them all in less than a minute. Don't worry, I'll spare you. And but still, it was good enough to just read about it and hear about it. And one of the things that fascinated me the most was the Mississippi River. It's like a friend to everyone in the country. It's just right there, prominent in the middle. It's there to say hi to you when you cross the country, and it looks so beautiful on the map. And I just think it was an amazing natural phenomenon. And another way I found out about how how everybody loves to travel except me. I was in a karaoke contest once, early 90s. I was a finalist, and the prize was like a week cruise. And I told everyone, I said, when I became a finalist, I said, if I win this contest, I'm going to auction this off for a donation to the Pediatric AIDS Foundation. And everybody thought I was kidding. But I didn't win, so they didn't find out. But you mark my word, I would have done it. I did not want to be away from. I don't like to be away from home. I just do. But my parents took me on some trips when I was a kid for lengthy periods, and it was actually very traumatic. I like to kind of have fun remembering it nowadays, but there was some rough moments. It caused me to withdraw from life and school and everything. Very ugly results. I used to blame my parents for it, but these days I've learned to forgive them because they took for granted, like we all do. Everybody loves to travel. The only reasons I travel nowadays, when my mother's been gone about 7 years now. I used to go home for Passover to Ohio every year. I would go, and other things to see like my class reunion. I'd go every time, and visit people, to visit friends and family. And there was a time I also was a groupie for some musicians, and I would go to see some bands. I would go out on the road with them, and that was a very fun thing. But they were my destination. It was never. I was rarely, aside from that New York trip, and then went to Toronto later on. It was rarely that there was a destination that intrigued me so much that I wanted to go to it, because I just wanted to stay home and just read about it. It was good enough for me. And like these days I go to, my best friend lives in Houston, and I'll go to see her, spend the afternoon with her, have lunch with her, but I'm always back by supper. But for me, that feels like it's traveling. It's getting away at least for a day. When I was 13 years old, I was in my father's office one day, waiting to go home with him, and just a little bored and looking for the nearest thing I can find. By then, my fascination with geography as a second grader had been replaced by my fascination with movies and with song standards, which still consumes me to this day. But for old time's sake, I grabbed the nearest thing I could find that could pass time with, and that was a Rand McNally Atlas. And somehow I got on this kick of looking at my old friend, the Mississippi River, and following it up to where it begins, because I never really considered that. Where does the Mississippi River begin? Beginnings are fascinating to me. I love seeing movies debuts. I love seeing movies where a favorite song was written for it, like I'm watching that song introduced for the first time. So how about applying that to the Mississippi River? So I trace it up on a map. It goes up through Minnesota. The line gets smaller and smaller. It even disappears for a little while, but I know it's still there, just proportionally too thin to show on the map. But then eventually I find it. It says Lake Itasca, source of the Mississippi River. I'm, again, 13 years old. I go, wow, that is fascinating. That has got to be one of the most amazing things, to see the lake, to see the spot where where there's no Mississippi River here, and suddenly there's none here, and then there's one here. It begins here, and I fantasized that it was just like a tiny little stream flowing out of this lake. And I'm like, it couldn't be that amazing, could it? And it was like the second grader within me was already like kind of getting a retro thrill, even though as a 13-year-old, I don't understand exactly why, but I could still feel it. And I was like, wouldn't mind, seeing it for myself one day. Not long after that, we were in our English class, we were studying mythology. And the assignment toward the end was to write a modern day myth, a story of how something came to be. And it's something in modern day. Naturally, I thought of the Mississippi River. I went up to my teacher. I guess I shouldn't say his name. I don't know from his. I'll call him Mr. P. That was his name, be with a P. So I go up to Mr. P. I say to him, do you know what Lake Itasca is? And he goes, oh, yes, that's in Minnesota, and it's the source of the Mississippi River. And I thought that was cool. So I didn't know. I thought it was something. I felt a little embarrassed because I had just found that out for the first time. And apparently Mr. P knowing it shows it's common sense. But then I started mentioning it to other people, and nobody knew what it was. So I don't know if you go to this day, I'm not sure, you go to your common folk and say, do you know what Lake Itasca is? Well, they know it's the source of the Mississippi. Well, now you all know. Okay, but anyways, so my essay was about, I remember it was about a family, a boy and his parents. They get separated. The mother winds up in what is now New Orleans, then the boy and his father wind up in Minnesota. And they're longing to find the mother. They don't know where she is. And the boy starts to fantasize that if he digs a little river out of this lake, maybe it'll take him to her. And then his father gets killed in an accident. The boy's all by himself. And he goes to bed one night, and the gods create a river for him to go to take down. I wish I would have saved that essay. It's long gone. But nonetheless, Mr. P loved the story, and that too was inspiring me. And so I'm like thinking, someday, okay, let's cut ahead to 2007. The movie The Bucket List comes out. I'm sure many of you saw it, the Rob Reiner directed film. I didn't think it was very good, actually, but I saw it. But the thing is, that movie had really drastic impact on my life because I had never heard that. If I had heard that expression, bucket list, before, I didn't remember it, but it stood out, and I use it on a regular basis now, all the time. I always say, this is on my bucket list, this is on my bucket list. So I owe it to that. So I'm still very glad I saw the movie. And one of the things I said when I was first coming up with my early editions of my personal bucket list was to travel somewhere for the sake of travel, not just to see somebody or to go to a concert, for the sake of a destination. And I'm thinking about it, and then, and not long after, ironically, I talked about a cruiser. I did go on a cruise because my friends were singing on it. I have several friends who are traditional jazz singers, that part of the traditional jazz circuit. I went on a cruise with them. It was just great spending time with them. Afterwards, my boss took me out to coffee. She asked me all about the cruise, and I start saying, my friend Becky did this, my friend Terry did this. And she's like, wait a minute, your friends were on the cruise? So she didn't even know. She thought I was taking a trip just for the sake of taking a cruise, not just to be with friends. And so that was a sign for me. It was time to take that trip. So I had two things in mind. I mentioned the Mississippi River. Another thing I thought of, I had also been fascinated about the London Bridge, because that, as I think everyone knows, was the original London Bridge is in Lake Havasu, Arizona. And to think of a bridge that was so prominent in history, now it's so settled and laid back in its setting, I thought that was kind of far out too. But I just asked several people for a second opinion. Which one should I do? The London Bridge? And every single one of them said, Lake Itasca, the Mississippi headwaters, for sure. That's got to be an amazing thing. And it's odd that I would come up with this all on my own. I independently planned a trip out of nowhere that I've never heard anyone planning the likes of it before. And I wondered, was Lake Itasca going to be a desolate area? But no, I look it up online, and yes, they do make a big deal of it there, as they should. They have a park there. And I heard about a cruise that's run by a father and son on the lake. So naturally, I got my tickets for that. I talked my friend into going with me, and I tell my friend, I got my anxiety about my travel anxiety, so it's going to be a short trip. It wasn't even 72 hours in between the time we were at Austin Bergstrom, and so it worked out. It worked out beautifully, and when I got to that lake, I looked at that. I could not believe I was there. I was just in awe looking at the lake at first, and I was so thrilled when I got on that boat. I don't know, this is a little off, but when I got on that boat, I went to get concession. The son was running the concession stand. I just went to get a bottle of water, and he says, how'd you like some popcorn? I said, sure, because I wasn't hungry. We were going to have lunch, but I'm like, how could I let this guy down? How could I not celebrate the moment? So I want to support him, so I threw my money at him. We stashed the popcorn in her purse and ate it later at the hotel, but at least it looked like it. And but then we're on the boat. It's a beautiful lake, and I'm thinking of how I envisioned that tiny little stream flowing out of the lake. Could it really be like that, or is it even different? Does it actually flow out of the lake? And when they say it's the source, is that just sort of a metaphorical thing, and it doesn't really actually flow out? I wasn't sure. And then when we get to this one part, granted it was a beautiful tour and all, but we get to this one part. He says the Mississippi headwaters are right over there. If you can look over, I look over, I don't see anything that really stands out, and I'm thinking maybe I misjudged this whole situation. I was a little worried. So we go out to lunch, but then we go. There is a place where you can park and walk up to the actual Mississippi headwaters. And my dreams, my childhood thrills within were totally fulfilled. It was everything I could imagine. It was like about to the other end of the stage. That's how long it was. A little line coming out of the lake, and the river, just a little creek flowing. They had set up some rocks along so you can walk on there, and I'm standing there, and I felt, well, the first thing to come to mind, even though it's kind of dull, is Leonardo DiCaprio going, I'm king of the world. That's how I felt standing on those rocks. And it was just pure magic. What a thrill to see a tiny little stream flowing out. And it's just a little creek just flowing out of a river. It looks like a big nothing. And yet this is the beginning of the Mississippi River. And I'm like, I am standing on the top of the Mississippi River. And what I envisioned was how the child within me would see that is a disproportionate view of me standing there with a map of the United States, and I'm standing up there waving at everyone, and you can see me, when you look at the United States. And man, it was everything I could have dreamed of, and I just was so thrilled that I actually brought myself there. And I come to think about how it's like, it was mythology class that started how, in my story, it was the gods that made it happen, that guided the boy to find his father. And but by the way, it flows out at a northwest angle, and that's like kind of ironic, because the Mississippi River flows anything but northwest, but it hooks around the lake, goes down. And I'm thinking that totally fit in with my story, the way, because the boy didn't know what he was doing. He started to dig the river. He thought he was going this way, and it turns out it's the other. And that too just totally amazed me. I came up with the idea of contacting Mr. P that night. I thought of it. I was telling my friend that, and he said, we should do that. I looked him up online, unfortunately, found out he had passed away like about a year before that. So what I did do is I sent a letter to his widow and snail mailed it, and never heard from her either way. So I can only hope that she got it, and I can only hope that she knows it. And And when I get to the airport and I actually see a friend of mine at the airport, my friend Maggie happens to be in Minneapolis as well for some kind of conference, and that's when I started. That was the first time I was able to rant about this story and just go on talking so much with such elation. She saw me like she'd never seen before, so I'm glad she was there. I'm feeling like, and I got to thinking, like, with this mythology story with the gods guiding the child, maybe Mr. P was guiding me on this independent adventure in spite of my reservations, and maybe he put Maggie at the airport to be there so I could have someone to tell it with and begin my experience. And well, I'm thinking life can be like a myth, and maybe my myth actually was controlled the way the gods control the boy's story. And I found out something not too long ago. I always took for granted. I always thought the Mississippi was the longest river in the country. Does everyone think that? It's not. It's actually the Missouri, and I never knew that before. I mean, I knew it wasn't the longest in the world. I knew the Yangtze and the Amazon, the Nile. I knew they were all, but I always thought the Mississippi River was the longest in the country. But even though it's thinner and may hold less water because of that, the Missouri's about 200 miles longer. So you better believe it. One of these days, I'm heading over to Three Forks, Montana. I'm going to experience the headwaters of the Missouri. Thank you.